affirming conversations about our mortality. They encourage people to live by design so they can finish strong. They didn't have COVID-19 in mind when they started this enterprise, but now find they have to refine their messaging. Let's bring in now the co-founders, Mapei Mahlangu and Dr. Helena Dolny. Of course, both of them have, through the years, been in the public eye in terms of their professions. But today, let's welcome both of you, and thank you so much for making the time. I imagine both of you watched the final send-off of late Minister Jackson Mthembu. What were your takeaways? Mapei, let's start with you.
Good afternoon, Desiree, to you and your viewers and South Africans who are going through this difficult time of grieving and of trying to console those who have lost a loved one. I think my most takeaway was obviously the presentation by Sister Mavis Hlajwayo, and simply because she touched on the lot of the end-of-life issues that we have loved, legacy, dignity, we touch on when we conduct foundation courses about life or key questions surrounding our dignity and mortality. So one of the things that she kept on mentioning was the fact that at some stage Jackson kept on saying to her, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be very disappointed, and that there were times where when Jackson Mthembu refused some of the intervention that they were trying to make, and because he could speak for himself, he was able to say no to that medication because he realized that he was ready and he didn't want to die in an uncomfortable situation where there was a lot of medical intervention that he knew that at that stage it was not necessary. But then she also mentioned about resuscitation attempts toward the end of life. Now, what we know about resuscitation is often what we see on television or medical movies. And a lot of people tend to believe that such intervention is always successful. Yet the reality is that the success rate is under 20% of resuscitation. So when we talk about certain decision, for example, that you do in order that you finish strong and die with dignity towards the end of life, we ask you to ask yourself about what kind of medical intervention you will accept should you be in a life threatening situation where your chances of living, like terminal stage cancer or advanced dementia, what kind of medical intervention would you say yes to, or would you say no to? In this case, we saw Jackson Mthembu being able to speak for himself, to say no to certain medical intervention, but more often than not, people are unable to speak for themselves. So we speak about things like choosing people who will speak for you when you can no longer speak for yourself in terms in your last days of your life. So for me, that was the biggest, one of the biggest takeaway. But another, I think I can't brush the picture away, the picture of Jackson's house and the meaning it has in the current day South Africa, where we are so obsessed with showing off certain wealth, and to see a man who have lived among his people and his people braving the rain, and young people, actually, it reminded me of the pictures that we watched in Gunu when Mandela was passing in his cortege, was passing in the street, and the people of Emalahleni did that for Jackson. So those were the two really biggest takeaway from me.
Helena, and I'm sorry because we're rushing for time now, but were you watching, what were your biggest takeaways in terms of a relation to the work that Love, Legacy and Dignity does?
So one of the things that people talked about was Jackson's relationships. And one of the things about COVID is that it happens quickly. It's really horrifyingly quickly. So to be at peace in your heart with your relationships, this is a time like no other on this earth in our lifetime. So making peace with our loved ones is so important, because we don't know when what's going to happen is going to happen. And then I hope that there's paperwork in order. We lend a helping hand to help people sort out their paperwork. And then that decision maker, if you can't speak. And last of all, are you clear about your rituals? I thought the funeral was beautiful. It's such a privilege to watch a funeral on TV, because so many of us are having friends and family pass away, and we don't all have access to the video and the technology. So we just know that it's happened. So it was quite a privilege to watch a whole ceremony and be part of collective mourning. And we know that for grief, that part of bearing witness with one another is so important. So we would help people work out what are the rituals that matter to yourselves, and what can you do at this time when we can't gather in the way that we normally can.
So take us through some of the conversations you've held with grief-stricken South Africans in how the limitations are forcing them to grieve in a different manner. Mapei, let's start with you.
So, one of the, let alone the grieving, I would come to grieving. I think the first thing is the conversation that we need to have before we reach a stage where we grieve. The conversation about what does the passing, the death in our families mean to our friendship right now? Can we have a frank discussion right now to say, some of us have comorbidities, and the expectation that will be there physically for people when they've lost a loved one, for the event, which is the funeral, it's perhaps it's not a realistic perception, expectation, but also we need to start a conversation about the fact that funeral is an event, grieving is a process. How can you be there for someone even without attending the funeral? So making sure that you won't be there in the 4 days, because now you can only wait for 4 days before you can have a funeral. But how are you going to make sure that in the first year, where there are so many first birthday without a person who have passed, when first anniversary without your spouse, the first birthday of your son, how are you going to be there for those people? How can you help the people post the event of a funeral with paperwork? Some people don't have means to move around. So can you, in the part of helping those who are grieving, actually make yourself available in the form of your car, or even saying, I will pay for Uber. You don't have to go into taxis and expose yourself further when you need to go to a workplace. If it's a colleague that has died, as a colleague that you are last people on the list, on the VIP list these days. So how can you support the family if that person was close to you? Are you going to make sure that you give them all the information in terms of the processes that are at work? Are you going to make sure that you make the car available for the family? And one of the things that are difficult, especially when people lose a breadwinner, is that paperwork to wrap up the estate takes forever. Are you going to be able to ask the family almost every month, how are they holding on, and contribute something because their breadwinner is not there and the money is not available? So one of the biggest conversations that we need to have is the new way of grieving and the new way of being there for those who are grieving.
Time is not our side, but Helena, quick one, the impact of these limitations on how we grieve now.
So it's really important for grief, for healing, we bear witness with one another. So trying to break down isolation, trying to create a network, trying to make sure that we're doing something together, even if we can't hear each other, that we actually know that it's 7 o'clock on that every day that we're doing something wherever we are. And what's really important in healing and grief is to hold on to what you have gratitude for in life, so that you don't sink into harmful depression. because it's one of the healing things that the people who do best in grief recovery are the people who hold on to a daily gratitude practice.
Yeah, let's thank you both for talking to us today. Would have loved to have a longer conversation, but alas, thank you so much. Dr. Helena Dolny and Mapei Mahlangu are the co-founders of Love, Legacy and Dignity. I imagine it's an ongoing conversation in terms of new ways of grieving as we're impacted by COVID-19. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Till next time, goodbye.